North stings the corner. You know it's coming. You still can't stop it.
Lacrosse fans, we are back for another episode of the Lacrosse Rundown. I'm Charlotte North, and this is ESPN's Jay Alter. If you have, there's an echo coming from my phone. If you have not been here before, we are here to talk about everything happening in the world of lacrosse this past week, but also hear some takes from you guys and hear what you guys saw in the world of college lacrosse and beyond. So, Jay, how are you feeling? Tell the world where you're coming from right now.
Yeah, so for me, the month of March is a huge overlap month because I'm still finishing my basketball season. We're in the thick of lacrosse season. So yesterday I was on the call for the NCAA women's basketball tournament, double overtime game between Maryland and Alabama. Charlotte, I think it was a top 5 craziest game I've ever called. You've got amazing threes being made at the end of regulation to force overtime, then 3 free throws with under a second to go to force double overtime. And Maryland ends up coming back from 17 down to win it in double overtime, the second largest comeback in the history of the NCAA tournament. It reminded me, honestly, atmosphere-wise, of that crazy comeback that North Carolina had against Northwestern in the 2022 semifinal, because you just don't often see that in sports at that level. When you get to that level, you know, okay, team's got that big of a lead. They're too good. You can't come back on them. And so when you see something like that happen and you get that crowd behind you, I got chills thinking about it.
If you guys were sitting on your couch watching March Madness and you thought you heard Jay's voice, you are correct. It was Jay.
Yes.
And I think that was by far the best game of either men's or women's March Madness tournaments. No doubt about it. Those free throws, I was nervous watching, but they were unfazed. I kind of felt like Maryland was going to win the whole time. But enough about basketball. Let's get to some lacrosse. A lot has happened this week,
well,
Jay.
Good weekend for Maryland basketball. Not so good weekend for Maryland lacrosse because that was a big battle with Northwestern. We kind of billed it as the battle for who's going to be in the driver's seat of the Big Ten. I think you and I both thought Northwestern would win the game, but in the fashion they won the game. And here's what's crazy. You score 16 goals, and you only get 2 from Madison Taylor. That, to me, Riley Campbell, Nikki Miles, Sam Smith, there is some depth to this Wildcats team. And I think we're still adjusting to no Skane, no Kuykendall. Where's the offense going to come from? It's going to come from everywhere. They are loaded, and they have propelled themselves, for me, Charlotte, into that tier 1 with Boston College in North Carolina.
I kind of feel like people were forgetting about them a little bit. I know it sounds crazy to think that Northwestern could be, quote, under the radar, but they look so new this year, and everyone's talking about Boston College and North Carolina. Do not forget about the Northwestern Wildcats. I mean, Riley Campbell is a player to me that has jumped off the page. Obviously, you mentioned Madison Taylor had 2 goals. She had 3 assists, 5 points total. But Riley Campbell's a left-handed player who operates on the same elbow as Madison Taylor. And a lot of times the double team leaves her to jump Madison Taylor, and she's wide open. She knows exactly where to be and when. She has high IQ. She had 5 points in this game, 4 goals. And she's actually the sister of the Golden Stick winner of the men's PLL championship series this past year, Matt Campbell of the Boston Cannons, who played at Villanova. But they have Nikki Miles from Penn on this offense as well. So a couple of grad transfers that are bearing a heavy load for this Northwestern team. And it feels like we talked about them in the beginning of the season. What were they going to look like? But they've gotten better every single time they played.
The key.
And it's scary if you're another opponent looking at them, looking to play them down the road.
Because think about it. It's still 2 more months until championship weekend. They're going to get 2 months more better on this trajectory. That is a scary thing for other top teams competing for a national championship. But they're also not the only team getting better. Boston College had a big test. I would say arguably their biggest test of the season so far, because it's hard to go across the country. That travel is very difficult. And Stanford, top 5 team coming into the week, you're thinking this is going to be a very close game. And frankly, it wasn't. Boston College won it handily. And again, similar to Northwestern, Charlotte, it's the depth. It's not, okay, focus on Rachel Clark, try and take out their midfield. they are loaded. They can beat you so many different ways. So I'm curious how you viewed that Boston College Stanford result.
Yeah, and let us know in the chat if you guys are watching and you were shocked by that final score, because I expected it to be a close ACC battle based on the way that Stanford has established themselves already, like you mentioned. But I think this game, more than any other game on Boston College's schedule so far, has showcased that they may be the most complete team. Their big three that we talk about: McKenna Davis, Rachel Clark, Emma Lapinto. McKenna Davis had 7 assists and a goal on the day. Rachel Clark, 5 goals. Emma Lapinto, 6 goals. I mean, you don't have enough to stop these dynamic players if you're an opposing defense. And then you have, right now, statistically, the best goalkeeper in the country in Shea Dolce. And we've talked about their defense. We've talked about Lydia Colasante and Shea Baker. Is this the most complete team that is in NCAA lacrosse right now?
I think so, Charlotte. And actually, I've got a confession to make for a second week in a row. Last week, I got a hard time because I was the one voter that put North Carolina #1 on my poll. Well, this week, I switched it back to Boston College because I was that impressed with the performance against Stanford. And what's funny is there was one less vote in the Inside Lacrosse poll. So there were still 17 first-place votes for Boston College, but no first-place votes for North Carolina. So I got a ton of text saying, "You coward, you didn't even vote this week." No, I did vote. Someone else didn't vote. I switched my vote from Carolina to BC. And here's my question about Boston College, Charlotte. You mentioned Shea Dolce. You mentioned their defense. To beat them, you're going to have to score at least 10 goals, right? Because I don't think you can keep this offense to under that. How are you going to score 10 goals against this defense and this goalkeeper with how locked in Dolce's been and how connected they are on the defensive end? And by the way, how are you going to limit this offense to under 10 goals? I just don't see a recipe to beat this team right now.
A week of prep, and it's I don't know how you put together a game plan like you mentioned. I don't think there's a goalkeeper, like I mentioned, playing better than Dolce is playing right now. And it's a testament to how much these units have changed from last year's Boston College team that won the national championship to this year.
Mm-hmm.
They look drastically different with different personnel, but they're even better in certain ways because of the ways that they've been able to build chemistry on both sides of the ball. So it's been really fun to watch. And I know we've talked about it a lot, but the matchup on April 5th with North Carolina is one that just inches closer and is continuing to build in anticipation.
Well, Charlotte, I've hedged my bet because I can say, oh, yeah, I thought North Carolina was going to win it. I had them #1, and now I've got Boston College #1. So I'm sitting in a safe spot, feeling pretty good that I backed both horses in that unbelievable showdown on April 5th.
Are you sure you weren't the one that didn't vote? The social media gurus out
Do
there
not
didn't scare you?
believe the conspiracy theory. I vote every Sunday. Trust me, I was in the hotel in College Park getting ready for the basketball game, trying to fill out what was a crazy shakeup because, again, we've got to rank them 1 through 25, Charlotte. And the toughest part for me right now is like 10 through 25, especially after some of the crazy upsets we saw this weekend. What were some results that really surprised you?
I mean, we saw Ohio State lose to USC, and this was USC's first Big Ten win. And that was special because obviously with conference realignment, USC has joined the Big Ten, and Ohio State has been on a heater to start the season. We talked about them last week, and this was the first loss that they've been handed. So it's going to be interesting to see how Ohio State shakes out after this. But, you know, I think the upset of the weekend had to be Brown going in and beating Yale.
That's mine. I mean, Yale looked like a top 5 team for long stretches in this season. You wonder that Yale-Michigan game early. Everyone had Michigan in the top 5 preseason. Yale wins that game. So then you put Yale in the top 5. Maybe Michigan's not that top 5, top 10 team we thought they would be. So I don't know if that win maybe boosted Yale a little too high, a little too quickly, because now it's back-to-back losses for Yale. Credit to Brown, who now the Ivy League, Charlotte, is blown open. Brown's in the conversation. I think this was not a fluke. I watched this game for 10-goal first quarter. First of all, Yale's up 6-4. So you're thinking, okay, Brown's holding their own. They did more than hold their own, Charlotte. This is a really, really good offense. I think Annie Burton's a great player.
Yep.
I was very impressed by this Brown team, and I don't think this is a fluke. I think Brown's here to stay. So now it's a 4-horse race in the Ivy League when you take a look at Princeton, Harvard, Brown, and Yale. And you could even put Cornell in the conversation.
You very well could. They cracked the top 25 this week. I mean, you mentioned Annie Burton, Avery Doran. They each had 7 points on this day. This is a Yale team. We've talked about them. They're veteran heavy. They've been tested. They made a run last season to the quarterfinal round of the NCAA tournament, and we had a lot of high hopes for them as they continued that streak throughout this season. But you mentioned the race now. Everyone's looking at the race for the ACC and the Big Ten. The Ivy League is so intriguing to me because I'm calling Princeton Penn later in April, and that is a matchup that I seriously think could define who hosts the Ivy League tournament this season. I'm looking at Princeton as maybe gaining an edge on the rest of the pack right now based on the performances they've had, but I certainly think that Brown and Cornell are in this conversation as well. And then Harvard, they dropped a close one to Notre Dame, but Harvard, they could put the pieces together and make a run towards this Ivy League championship tournament.
Well, the loss to Notre Dame won't hurt them in terms of Ivy League standings. So that's an important thing to point out. And I also don't think one loss is going to eliminate you. Yale still has a chance too if they run the table. I think you could have a 2-loss Ivy League team host as the 1 seed because there's going to be so much carnage and everybody beating everybody.
Yeah, and it was really cool to see that this Brown team was able to pull off this upset. It's the biggest win for head coach Katrina Dowd in her time at Brown, and it's been special to see what iconic talent like Katrina Dowd, both in the playing and coaching discussion, has been able to do at this Ivy League school. And we talk about all these teams, and some of them are 11-0, 10-0, and have played a lot of games. The Ivy League teams have not played as many games as the teams that we've been talking about. So maybe the development of these teams is going to come a little bit later in a couple weeks, and we're going to see them continue to progress. And I think that's only going to benefit them when they get to the Ivy League tournament and then make a run towards the NCAA tournament. How many teams do you think are going to get in on Selection Sunday from this league?
It's a good question. I think 3 will get in with the potential of 4. And I think part of that is I don't think the ACC is going to get in as many as we're accustomed to see them get in. And honestly, the Big Ten has to play out because obviously Northwestern's at the top, but I don't know who 2 through 7 are. I mean, Johns Hopkins probably emerging themselves as that 2 spot, but there's so much still to be decided in these final 6 weeks until we get to Selection Sunday. I can't believe this season is flying by the way.
I really can't believe it. We're already over the halfway point. You guys in the comments, let us know who you think you would vote as the 3rd, 4th, 5th best team right now in the nation. Obviously, we've talked about Boston College and North Carolina, but who do you have at 3 through 5? And we're interested to see what you guys think.
I'll tell you a team working their way back into the conversation, Syracuse. They had some, first of all, toughest schedule in the country.
Absolutely.
Some early losses. This is the youngest team in the country. Outside of Emma Ward, everybody's playing big-time minutes for the first time in their college career. And I was very impressed with their week. Under the radar, not a lot of people talking about it, but to beat a really good Loyola team and then go and beat a Notre Dame team in conference, I thought that was very impressive to sweep the week against 2 ranked opponents and to do it as your freshman really start to ascend. Caroline Trinkus, I thought, really found her best lacrosse. And here's the big key, Charlotte. If Syracuse can limit the penalties, they are a top 5 team in the country. That is what has plagued them in the losses. In the win against Loyola, they only had 1 card, and it came very late in the game. If they could stay clean, they're a top 5 team.
I actually really agree with you here. And who's impressed me on their team and has been a steady state for them this whole season throughout the 2nd hardest schedule in the nation is their goalkeeper, Dan Guyette. She has been rock solid in every single one of their top 10 matchups this season. And she's proven to be, in her first year of playing major minutes, she's proven to be a top ACC goalkeeper, which is remarkable. And Jolie Caramelli is now taking draws for them. That's another spot that they've continued to develop in and get better at. And I think Emma Muchnick as well, their leader in the midfield, their leader who's playing like a veteran. She had amazing game against Loyola on the road and willed them to that win. And I just think you're seeing them play together. They're playing excited and they believe in each other. And that's a dangerous spot to be in if you're opposing teams ready to play this battle-tested Syracuse team.
Monitoring our comments, and we love all the action in the chat right now. Layla says she agrees with us. I'm seeing Syracuse coming back, and I'm hoping Clemson can get back in the conversation. So I agree with her because Syracuse 3 weeks ago is where Clemson is now, where you hit a bump in the road and you lose a couple of games and people write you off. Well, take a page out of Syracuse's book. You control your fate in a season. So with so many games still to play, if Clemson can turn this thing around, get a couple of wins, they'll be right back in the conversation. We know they have the talent. They just need to string the positive results together like Syracuse did this week.
Yeah, and if they make the ACC tournament, which I anticipate that they will, all bets are off. It's a tournament time. Everything is elevated to another level, and everybody's record is 0-0 at that point. So that has a huge factor in determining what happens the rest of your season. But I couldn't agree with you more. Everybody, obviously, we're here to talk about lacrosse and break down what happens each week. And some moments feel much bigger than others, but it is a marathon, not a sprint. And the way that the season happens, you don't want to be the same team that you are in February and March come May. You want to be a different team, a better team, a more experienced team that's learned from the adversity that you face throughout the season. Personnel may change a little bit. Tactics may change. People may shift, whether they're playing a zone defense or a man defense or different things like that. But it's very cool to see at this point, this midway point of the season, how much teams are changing and playing differently together. But let's talk about that Syracuse game one more time that happened against Notre Dame. They had the largest crowd in a Division I women's lacrosse game this season so far, with 3,622 people in the stands at the JMA Wireless Dome. And that was pretty cool to see on a Sunday.
In a one-goal game, the crowd makes the difference too. That crowd, especially for a young team, right? I think it can play a factor. I saw it last night in the basketball game that I called at College Park. The crowd made the difference. In a game of inches, the fine margins, a crowd can really buoy you over the top. Great shout, Charlotte, on that crowd. And we hope to continue to see attendance records be broken, not just in Syracuse, but all over the country.
I have a feeling that number is going to keep going up. The Syracuse faithful, they always show up. They love their lacrosse. I'm looking at how many fans come out to Chapel Hill on April 5th to see the number 1 and number 2 teams in the country play against each other. I bet it'll be a pretty high number. And then
you're going to be there, right? You're going to be one of them.
I'm going to be there. I may be up in the booth, but we'll see about that. I'm excited to see the number of fans that continue to show out for these teams, because lacrosse is growing and there is support in places you might not think it exists. And it's pretty cool when you see the growth of the sport happening right in front of your eyes.
And what's really cool is everybody watching and interacting with us, you're part of that growth, right? This is a movement that really started, I think, when Charlotte hoisted that championship in 2021. And obviously even before that, right? But it's been growing, but we're really ramping up the tidal wave. And I think we're going to see it at Gillette Stadium championship weekend. And I just love that we're kind of all in this together. We're watching this growth together. Continue to join in the conversation. And, Charlotte, I won't speak for you, but I've really enjoyed just this conversation because it's something the sport has lacked over the years. And just doing this every week and hearing our comments and reacting to what you guys want to talk about, I think continues to push the sport forward. And I guess on that note, the chaos has been all over the country, not just on the women's side. Maryland looked untouchable on the men's side, and then boom, they lose in triple overtime to a Michigan team that was probably the biggest disappointment in the country, and then boom, they beat number 1 Maryland, and it shows how quickly things can change in a season.
Talk about everybody writing a team off. Everybody was writing off this Michigan men's team. They come out and they beat Maryland for the 4th straight time as a program. So it feels like this Michigan team has the Terps figured out in a way that nobody else really can. And it's kind of mind-boggling to me because they love that matchup. Obviously, it's a historic matchup. It's a Big Ten matchup. It's oftentimes a matchup we see once or twice or 3 times in a year. But this is the 4th straight time they've beaten them. I mean, what is it?
They've got their number. I mean, which is crazy to say, because how could anybody have Maryland's number with how dominant they have been throughout this decade, not just this season? And particularly, we were talking about earlier, Shea Dolce in Boston College and how difficult it is to beat them. Well, the same way with Logan McNaney in Maryland, you're going to have to beat them in a low-scoring game because they just don't allow that many goals, and that's exactly what Michigan did. I was very impressed with Michigan defensively, limiting the possessions, really, limiting the opportunities, grinding out a triple overtime result. But here's the thing for Maryland. The sky is not falling. If your one loss is going to come in triple overtime, it shows you are that difficult to beat. And I still think they're the best team in the country, even with that loss to Michigan.
You don't think the number 1 team in the country is the Cornell Big Red up in Ithaca, New York?
They've got the best player in the country in
They
CJ
certainly
Kirst.
do.
They wouldn't be my national championship favorite at this point. But Kirst, I mean, you can give him the Tewaaraton now. After that performance this weekend, Charlotte, what's his address? Tewaaraton committee. I'll save you a lot of time. Ship it to him in the mail. It's over.
So if you guys didn't see, Cornell beat Yale on the road 19-14. And CJ Kirst, who we highlighted last week, had 9 goals on the day.
9.
8
9.
in the first half. 8 in the first half. 8.
Did you ever score 9 goals in a game?
I did. I had 10 at one point. But
okay. Sorry. CJ, you got one more to score. Go on.
No.
Who'd you have 10 against?
I think it was Virginia Tech.
Shout out Hokies.
But this is a top Ivy League matchup, and everybody is scouting number 15 on Cornell. Everybody is sending their top matchup. They are on high alert when he touches the ball. They are sliding to him early, yet he still finds a way, even when he doesn't have the ball in his stick, to get open off ball, to score in ways from low angles that people don't expect him to be shooting from. 9 goals in a game like this is ridiculous. And he's actually on pace to break Peyton Cormier's all-time goals
and he's going to break
record.
it. He's going to break it. I really do.
The record was set last year by Peyton Cormier of UVA. It was at 224 goals in a career in the NCAA. And CJ is now over the 200 mark, and I believe he breaks it before we get to tournament play.
I agree. I think he's going to get 240, to be honest with you. At this pace, here, you know what I'm going to say, Charlotte? You know it's coming. You still can't stop it. He is bolded, underlined, highlighted on every scouting report. You can't stop him. You cannot.
Somebody put Jay on the call for whatever game that will be. I don't have a crystal ball, but we need that there. All right. That was an exciting weekend on the men's side. But again, both games, the women's and the men's games, right now you're seeing teams separate themselves from the pack in terms of the way that they're developing and the way that they're playing a little bit better every week. And that is what it takes to build a championship type team, to get to Gillette at the end of May. And all of you guys, Jay mentioned it, that are watching here, we not only as we build to Final Four weekend and hopefully get to talk with you guys in person and see you guys there, but we get to hear what games you guys are watching. We get to hear what games you guys have attended and what you've thought so far, what teams have jumped off the page to you guys. Because obviously we're highlighting teams that we thought had an amazing weekend, or they're really starting to pop and come together. But we love hearing what you guys are watching across all Division 1, 2, and 3 lacrosse. So we want to hear what you guys are thinking.
And there's a bunch of people in the chat right now saying they will be at Gillette. We will be at Gillette. Right in the chat, would you be interested in attending a live show at Gillette? Something that Charlotte and I might be cooking up behind the scenes as the Lacrosse Rundown tries to get to that next level.
Layla in the chat said she's going to UConn versus Denver. I think we need to talk about the Denver men's program.
Big win.
Went down to Dallas, Texas to play the Duke Blue Devils on the men's side. And shout out my hometown. They played at Highland Park Stadium in Dallas, Texas, and the house was absolutely packed. Watching it on TV, it looked electric. It's a field I got to play on in high school. I used to shoot there all the time, train there. So it was a really cool moment to see the growth of the sport in Texas and to see teams, players, coaches, families show out on a Saturday night to watch this top 10 matchup. Obviously, Denver's had an up and down season. They weren't ranked in this matchup, and they were 5-5 or 4-4 heading into this matchup. But check out the highlights here. They put on a shooting clinic, and it feels like, Jay, Denver's been a team for so long that has been full of elite level shooters. It's just something about the way that they are able to score from low angles, and their accuracy has always blown me away.
And to me, Denver's a team that can win the Big East and get the automatic bid to the NCAA tournament, where they'll be playing their best lacrosse at the right time. It definitely could be a factor on the men's side. And for the ACC, this is another tough loss in non-conference play. I think as we're trending towards Selection Sunday on the men's side, the ACC is not going to have as many bids as they historically do. Charlotte, this is going to sound a little crazy. I think they could have as few as 2 bids. I really do. I think it could be as low. I hope not. I hope not, but I think North Carolina and Notre Dame right now, even as Syracuse, I think still has to prove themselves, still have to win some games. Duke, I think, might be on the outside looking in. It's crazy to say, but you look around and they just haven't performed as well as they normally do in non-conference play.
And it hurts the ACC a little bit that there's no automatic qualifier. So the men's ACC tournament is now in existence again. It was brought back a season ago, but whoever wins the ACC tournament does not earn an automatic qualifying bid to the NCAA tournament. So that is an at-large bid for typically the winner of that tournament that's taken off the board. Right. And it's reminiscent, Jay, to me of 2022 when the Blue Devils and the Fighting Irish were not included in the NCAA tournament, although they both seemed like top 10 caliber teams towards the end of the year. They just didn't have a strong enough resume
because of the non-conference. I totally agree with you. I think it could definitely be a repeat of 2022. All right, let's get to your questions. You've been so active in the chat. We love all the questions you fired at us, but Charlotte, we've got to prioritize those people that commented on last week's episode, right? So once this episode goes final, go to the comments, put your question, and we will get you in next week. What do we got?
Our favorite segment of the show. Question number 1 comes from Madeline, and it was, what has been your favorite matchup this season, and what matchup are you looking forward to the most in college lacrosse?
Well, I think the matchup we're all looking forward to the most is April 5th, Boston College, North Carolina. In terms of games that's already been played, I go to that Hopkins-Syracuse game in the Dome, went to overtime. Hopkins won it. I called it, so I'm a little biased, but that was an electric game.
I'm going to Homewood Field, but I'm staying with the Blue Jays for my favorite game so far. Early, cold, outside in February. Penn Quakers versus Johns Hopkins goes into overtime. Ashley Mackin, who could be a Tewaaraton finalist at the end of this season, has a no-look backhanded shovel shot for the game-winning goal. That was electric, and those are two teams that are very strong, looking stronger as the year goes on. So that win means a lot to Hopkins as they continue on.
What do we got next?
Next question. Kyle Heckler 5315 says, after Boston this year for the Final Four and Evanston next year, where would you like to see the championship played at next?
The Lacrosse Rundown brought to you by Homewood Field, the home of Johns Hopkins. Both of these questions, Charlotte, we're going Johns Hopkins. Are they paying us? I think it should be at Homewood Field.
I think you say that because of what happened in 2022 when there were 15,000 people.
I just think it should be there every year. I don't love the football stadiums for a lacrosse game. I really don't. And Homewood Field just feels special. It's like Lambeau Field for the NFL. I just think you have Homewood Field. Let's use it. It'd be sold out every single season. That's where I would have it. What do you think?
It's historic. It is definitely a location that's favorable to a lot of teams, a lot of areas. I'm going to go with no football stadiums, but any MLS or NWSL soccer stadium. I think they're the perfect size venues. Yeah. And I think you're able to eliminate other lines. There are no confusing lines on the field. You want lacrosse lines only, whether it's the Kansas City Current Stadium, whether it's over in California where the San Diego Wave play, whether it's, any MLS or NWSL stadium. Right now, there's one in Philly that's top notch. There's so many, but I think those venues are by far and away the best to be able to host as many lacrosse fans as possible as the sport continues on the rocket ship that it's on. And it also allows for the perfectly curated field for the visuals, the lines, new fans understanding the game. And I just think you can't go wrong with that. But I love the Hopkins pick as well. Just like that soccer stadium right there. Imagine lacrosse lines and a national championship crowd packed.
All right, you convinced me.
There.
I'm in. Homewood, you sprinkle that in once every 5 years, but I'm with you. If it looks like that, which I believe it would, I'm in.
Yes. All right. Lily13 Lax said, if you had a favorite hash on the 8-meter, where would it be? And
well, every hash was your favorite hash.
What shot are you taking? All right, I'll go first here. Obviously, as a right-handed attacker, I love the right-handed hashes. So for those of you who don't know, the 8-meter is the fan or the arc on a women's lacrosse field. And if you get fouled inside of that space, you get a penalty shot on one of the hashes. It's the hash that you were closest to when you were fouled. As a right-handed player, I'm taking either the far hash on the right side or the second hash inside. This might be a hot take, but I like the furthest hash, the most outside hash as a right-handed shooter that gives you the lower angle, but it's one that I'm most comfortable with. So that's the hash I'm going with. Jay, if you played lacrosse, if you were an attacker and you took an 8-meter, what shot would you take and from what hash?
That's fascinating, Charlotte. And I'd love to hear your explanation of that, because when I read this question, I thought you were going to say the center hash, really, because I thought you'd have the most real estate to go. Like, you want a small angle. I'm thinking center hash. I got every option available to me. Plus, I could run in.
So
but is that a bad answer?
You're taking center hash, running it in with the lethal first step off the
lethal first. Yeah, lethal first step, and it's coming. You still can't stop it.
I think we need some footage of you trying this out.
All right, at Gillette, I will take a free position.
No, our fans in this chat room right now, they want to see you do it at the ACC tournament in a couple weeks.
All right. I'm in.
Next question. Stash on the Move asked, do you see the college game
Hold on, Stash on the Move.
I got to know more about that, but we'll put a pin in that.
Okay.
Do you see the college game going to the 6-person format so players can adapt?
So that's 6s, which was awesome for the WLL. I thought it was perfect for the WLL. For the college, I think it would limit roster sizes, so I don't like that for the sport because we want more, not less. But I also am on a 1 episode suspension for talking rules. Somebody in the chat very rudely last week said, Jay, stop talking about rules. Leave the rules to Charlotte. So
don't you guys worry. We're going to have our episode this summer that comes out about what we think could maybe benefit the game of lacrosse in terms of rules. And you will not be banned for that one. You have some very good insight onto what will help speed up the play and speed up the broadcast time for lacrosse. But I don't see this going to 6s. I see sort of similar to rugby, where there's rugby 7s and there's full field rugby, or basketball. There's 3-on-3 basketball. And then there's also the traditional basketball that we're used to seeing. I see us maintaining field lacrosse at the collegiate, professional, and international level. I see us also having 6s lacrosse at the international 6s, international professional, but not collegiate level. I think you'll see more teams start to play it as they develop and train. You'll see more 6s tournaments happen at the youth level. I think 6s is the best thing for anyone getting into the sport for the first time, because it's the easiest to understand and you're forced to play everywhere on the field. It helps you so much in terms of development as a lacrosse player. So I think you're going to see 6s be implemented in so many more ways. I just don't think the college game will ever turn to the 6s format.
Love it.
All right.
Final question, right?
Final question. May Moody 20 said, favorite pregame snack? Or Jay, favorite pre-broadcast snack?
LaCroix Tangerine. Sponsor us, LaCroix. Well, no way. This is my broadcast pregame, during game, post game.
You don't. LaCroix. For those of you who are caffeine lovers out there, I'm going with a coffee and probably a turkey sandwich of sorts.
Wait, as a player or a broadcaster?
Both. I'm going both. As a player,
turkey sandwich.
As a player,
what about like carbing up?
Okay, that's the night before. You get a big carbo
See, I'm not a player.
The night before, and as a player on the day of a game, depends on the time of the game. But I'm more often than not going with a big sandwich that fills you up, and then obviously snacks during in between quarters, timeouts, halftime, you name it. I'm a big snack person in game, but
we're still looking for our NIL deal, by the way. So if any snack company wants to take over the Lacrosse Rundown, you're more than welcome.
In the booth, I have equally as big of a snack bag, and it seems to be that I'm the only one who really needs all the snacks. But LaCroix,
yeah, that is so funny that you got lime LaCroix going.
There are many good flavors out there, but this is certainly fueling us and keeping us hydrated.
So those were all the questions, because we're trying to do 5 an episode. We've got some great questions in the chat. So next week, we've got Kay asking, this summer's my recruiting year. I've been attending many different camps for school. Any tips on how to get noticed at camps? I want to talk about that. That could be a whole episode in the summer, Charlotte, as we kind of do our off-season episodes lining up. Grady Levine's asking, who do you think is going to win the Natty? Michaela wants to know Tewaaraton. We love all the questions, and that's why next week, Tuesday, we'll be ready to answer some more.
Oh, yes. And put a pin in that. Now we got a running list of what's coming this summer and some special guests. You guys may never know who's coming on the Lacrosse Rundown, but stay tuned. All right. Games to watch as we look ahead at this week. Jay, what do you got?
Big test for North Carolina in the Midwest, Northwestern first, and then Notre Dame at the weekend. Notre Dame, their record doesn't show it, but they're a difficult defense to break down. And how does North Carolina respond from what's going to be a hard battle against Northwestern? If they lose that game, how do they respond to their first loss? If they win that game, how do you stay focused on a Notre Dame team? We will have the call in South Bend, North Carolina and Notre Dame. So we are looking forward to that. But obviously you can't look at Notre Dame yet because their focus will be on Northwestern in 2 versus 3.
I mean, that is a hard road trip. If you're in North Carolina, you're playing Northwestern on Thursday at 8 p.m. on Big Ten Network, and then you're turning around and you're playing in a conference game on Sunday. So you guys turn on your TVs at 3 p.m. Eastern time on Sunday. If you want to hear us talk more lacrosse, we're calling UNC Notre Dame in South Bend, which is going to be awesome. My sleeper pick of game of the week, maybe flying under the radar a little bit, is Florida versus Penn tomorrow at noon Eastern time. Penn is coming off a win against Loyola on the road. And Florida is another team that we didn't talk about tonight, but they're looking better every single time that they play. I think they're 7 right now in the rankings. And they have a redshirt freshman and Franny Han, who is bearing a heavy load and doesn't seem to bat an eye at the hard schedule that they've played and all the things that have been thrown at her. So Florida versus Penn, I mean, 2 teams that are running a hot streak right now.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. Obviously, my attention kind of has been staying in the ACC and the Big Ten and the Ivy League, but Florida's kind of doing what they did last year, which was keep a low profile, lay low, and play your best lacrosse at the right time. And we might see the Gators at Gillette for championship weekend. You never know.
Absolutely. Well, thank you all for joining tonight. You guys have the best insight. You guys are the best part of this show. You're our favorite part of this show, getting to talk with you guys about lacrosse, about what we see in the college landscape, all of our thoughts, but more importantly, getting to chat with you guys. So if you guys have a question for next week's show, make sure the second this live stream ends, you head to the live tab on my YouTube channel, you subscribe, like the video, and then drop in the comments what question you want us to answer. And we'll do our best to get to it next show. We cannot thank you guys enough for being here. This community is very special to us. It's the highlight of our weeks, and we can't wait to talk to you guys next week. Obviously, there's a lot to watch this weekend, so stay tuned, and we'll see you guys next week.
Yeah, don't forget, Sunday, 3 o'clock, Charlotte and I have the call, North Carolina and Notre Dame, and we'll talk to you next Tuesday at 8 o'clock.
Let's freaking